What's happening, gents, or whoever is watching, I don't know. We're back again with the 2015 Vauxhall Corsa E. The previous work that I'd done on it, I noticed at the front some pads were worn out, so I thought I notified them and they want me to crack on and do the work, so I thought, oh, I might as well make another video then. So I'll just take you guys along with me, the necessary steps, just do front discs and pads on a 2015 Vauxhall Corsa E. It's a nice and simple job. First things first, what you want to do is undo the brake reservoir cap. Then obviously jack the vehicle up, put it on axle stands. You can see I've always got to have axle stands. And buzz the front wheels off. And then you'll get to this point here. So what you want to do is, here's your retaining clip, the anti-rattle clip there. So these are simply enough just to pop these off. You just get a screwdriver in between there and just pry that off like that. That little bit pops out the hole. You just pull the one off. And I've got an APEC disc and pads today, and I've checked them all. They are all correct, thank God. And they do come with new retaining clips, so that's nice. So for me, I don't really need to worry about refitting that old one. I've got a new one to fit. Next thing you want to do, I'm just going to grab the wheel and put it on full lock. So just grab the wheel like so, like that, and you've got these two little rubber bungs at the back here. Got one here and one at the bottom there. Just pull these out. Sometimes it's easier with a flat blade screwdriver just to get in there. Pop that out like so. Next thing you want to do, this is a 7mm long Allen key, it's on a 3/8 ratchet, and that's what these are. So just put it in there, crack that loose, and as you can see, the sliding pin there is undoing, and this is what holds on the caliper to the carrier there. So just simply undo both of these, top one and bottom one. And once they're undone, what I find is easier to do is just get the screwdriver again and push this sliding pin back, so you can see that threaded portion comes out of the carrier there, like that. Do the one underneath, as you can see there. Just get in there, wedge it back, push it back like that. Now what I do, I just depress the piston a little bit, just so it's easy to get the the caliper off, sorry. Put my screwdriver in between the inner pad and the disc, and I just push it back a little bit like that. And what that's doing, that's just pushing the piston back a little bit, and hopefully I can just pull the caliper off of the disc. Sometimes you need a bit of persuasion. I just have to push the piston back a little bit more using that method. Wiggle the caliper, and it comes off like so. By the way guys, I'm just going to show you on this side, because doing the other side is literally just a repeat of what I'm doing. So I only need to show you one side, and then you know what to do on the other side, because it's exactly the same process. So once the caliper is off like so, these brake pads, they should just knock out the front here. Doing this one-handed. So you get the idea, you just knock the pad and it should just fall out the top of this caliper assembly there. All I've done was just hit the pad here, and it just simply fell out because they just do get stuck at the top there on the actual caliper itself. And then the inner one is just held into the piston via a clip, so you just pull that back. There we go, that's the clip I'm on about. Just pulls out, nice and easy. And then the next stage is to get the disc off. So what I find is easier, these are a T30 Torx bit. So what you want to do is just wedge a screwdriver. I've already cracked these off, but you wedge a screwdriver in between the carrier and the disc here, and that will lock the disc up whilst you get the your ratchet and the T30, and then you just crack these loose. Make sure you use the correct size because these can easily round out, and then you have to, if that happens, then you have to drill this out. It's going to be a nightmare. So you just undo these. Once the two T30 retaining bolts are removed, just simply tap the disc. There we go, and it's come away from the rear flange there. And then hopefully, I don't know if this is going to happen, if you're lucky, today it's not going to happen. Sometimes, obviously not on this vehicle, on other vehicles you can just pull the disc out and there's enough clearance here to get the disc out, so not too much of an issue. All I have to do is just undo these two bolts at the back here holding the carrier on. One there and one there, and remove this carrier assembly. So all I've got here is a 19mm socket on a long 3/8 ratchet. These can be fairly tight, but let's crack them off to get them loose. And I'm going to gun them out the rest of the way. There's the bottom one cracked off. There's the top one. These are 19mm. Them out the rest of the way. That's that one. That's that one. And there, the carrier off. Nice and easy. This can just come off nice and easy too. Next stage is what I want to be doing, is cleaning up the face of this just with a wire brush. Get this nice and clean because this is where the new disc's going to seat on here. You don't want any debris behind the disc because then you can cause run out issues. The disc's sitting slightly crooked. So all I do is just get a wire brush and clean the face of this. There's a bit of corrosion behind there. Make sure that's nice and clean. Once that flange is all nice and cleaned up, I know there's a bit of corrosion there, but that's literally, there's no ridge there. I can't feel nothing on the fingernail, so that's as smooth as that's going to get. Obviously you could probably get like a some sandpaper and just really make sure that's absolutely perfect, but that's going to be fine like that. So next thing, what I want to do is just clean out these grooves of the caliper. This is where the pads sit, so I want to make sure this is all free from any debris and dirt, just so the pads, the new pads, when they're in there, they can move along freely. It won't cause any binding issues. So again, I'm just going to use my wire brush and clean all of that section down there. So once the flange is all nice and cleaned up, and I've just cleaned all the carrier there, as you can see, it's also best to pull these out. These run along nice and smoothly within the rubber section. They're probably alright, but I like to pull them out and just clean up this, get rid of most of this black stuff off here. And what I do, I apply a small film of just some silicone grease, brake grease, just on them pins there, and that'll never stop them from seizing up inside this rubber, because these have to move. This is what allows your caliper to slide, and when the inner piston makes contact with the inner pad, it brings the outer pad in contact with the discs, because the caliper's a floating caliper there, so these have to be free floating. Definitely check that. If they're tight, and once that's cleaned up, and if they're still tight in there, sometimes you have to remove this rubber boot and get a rat tail file and just clean up in here, because sometimes you get some corrosion, and what it does, it squeezes this rubber section onto the sliding pin there because of the corrosion. It's just squeezing it all tight. So, but this car ain't that old, so it's fine, but just do definitely check this. I've seen this happen a lot with brakes binding, and these can be the culprit. Pop it back in. Don't want to get none on the thread. I'm just talking about this metal section here. You don't want to get none of that grease on this thread here. Just pop that back in, and there we go. So that slides absolutely lovely. That's what you want it to look like, free sliding like that. If it's really stiff, then investigate it. Do that to both sliding pins. As you say, this is all a repeat on the other side too. So everything I'm doing here, do on the other side. I'm just going to pull this out. clean all that black stuff off there. You can use a wire wheel on a grinder or anything like that, it's just even quicker, but it's only a fine piece of dirt there, so I just find a wire brush. Don't sand these, by the way, just use something light to just get that dirt off, then grease it and put it back in. So once all the sliding pins are all cleaned, and then we put some silicone grease on there, cleaned the flange here and cleaned the carrier. Now it's time for reassembly. So what I've done is I've just put some anti-seize on the front of this flange here. It'll ever stop in future the new disc ever getting seized on here due to corrosion, or just keeps it corrosion free as well. So the next thing I want to do is fit the new disc. What you want to do is, well, these ones, they come in a plastic bag and they've got like a corrosion inhibitor on there, so it's got like a thin film of oil on the disc. Obviously that needs to be cleaned off, but what I do is I tend to fit the disc to the hub here, fit it with the 2 T30 screws, and then I just get some thinners and I just run some thinners on a cloth just to clean the corrosion inhibitor off this disc. If you don't, then you can contaminate the new pads, or at least you'll get a lot of smoking when the brakes heat up, so it's always best just to clean that off there. So I'm just going to fit this to the flange now, to the hub. So here we are, the new disc's fitted. I'll put back in the 2 T30 screws so put a bit of anti-seize on the screws as well to stop them from ever seizing into the hub. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to fit the carrier. Personally, well, I'm going to have to reuse these, but if you're concerned, do check, because sometimes these bolts do have to be replaced, or with a washer or something like that. But I'm just going to give these a wire brush off. I'm going to use just a little dab of Loctite on the threads, and then just tighten them up tight. So to be honest, I have reused these a lot in the past and I've never had an issue, but if you're concerned, do check to see if they do have to be replaced or not. Loctite to the bolt, and then just simply screw in the bolt there. Just using the gun. And then I'm going to go forward to tighten them up nice and tight with my ratchet. Do make sure these go up tight as well. If you're concerned, then obviously look on the internet for a torque specification, what they needs to go to, but I usually just do them up nice and tight and I've never had an issue. So now them 2 carrier bolts are done up nice and tight, I'm now just going to use a rag with some thinners and just clean off any corrosion inhibitor that might be on this disc here. Some discs have it, especially ones I find in the plastic bags, they have the corrosion inhibitor put on there just to stop the discs from rusting, or other brands, they just simply don't even bother, and then therefore you don't really have to do this section. But it's always nice just to give it a wipe off anyway, just to make sure there's nothing on these discs here that could potentially contaminate the new pads. So I'm just going to crack on and do that, and then the next step will be to push the piston back on the caliper. So now the next step is we want to be pushing this piston back into the caliper, so then the new pads will fit. Now, so what I would usually do is I would put, this is a 10mm, by the way, bleed screw, just put a 10mm spanner on there, and then I'll just use a bit of vacuum hose, put that over the bleed nipple, and have that at the end of it into like a container of some sort. Crack that bleed nipple off, and then what that'll do is when you're pressing back the piston in the caliper, all you're doing is pushing out the old fluid, and it's a lot easier to push the piston back. However, in my case, that bleed screw is not coming out. I've really hung on it, and I do not want to risk snapping that bleed screw off, and then it'll need a whole new caliper. So all I'm going to do is just simply press it back nice and slow with a pair of big water pump pliers, nice and slow, just to push the fluid back. And this is the way I'm going to have to do it today. But obviously the pros of doing it the other way, cracking the bleed nipple off, is that all the old fluid in the caliper you're pushing out, and you're pushing out just into a container, whereas obviously pushing it back this way, what I'm doing is I'm pushing the fluid back up the hose and back into the reservoir up the top there. That's why I've took the cap off. So it's not ideal pushing the old fluid back, but I do not want to risk snapping off that bleed screw and then opening another can of worms. So I'm just going to crack on and do it the old way, or this way rather. So all I use here is a big pair of water pump pliers, and all I do is slowly press the piston back. Don't force this, just go nice and slowly. Like that, you can see the piston's going back, and as I'm pressing this back, do watch the top of the reservoir because that fluid will rise as the fluid's going back into there. If it's about to overfill, just suck some out and don't let it spill all the way down, because brake fluid is corrosive and any paint it can get on can damage the paint. But here, as you see, slowly pressing the piston back, and that's it. It's all the way back now. As you say, if the bleed nipple was cracked off, it would go back a lot faster and easier, and you wouldn't potentially push some old fluid back. But I don't want to break that bleed nipple, so I'm doing it this way. So now the piston's pushed back in the caliper there. Next thing to do is to insert the pads, but before I do that, I just need to put some anti-seize on the contact surfaces of the pad here, not the friction surface. Don't get any lubricant on this section. You only want to put some anti-seize on these contact surfaces whereabouts it sits in here, like so. So you just want to be putting the anti-seize there and here whereabouts it sits, and a bit on the top because that's where it sits on the caliper as well, just to stop any just to stop corrosion really, and just allow it to move more freely. So I'm going to get these brushed up with some anti-seize, and then I'll show you when they're all fitted. So all I've done here is I've just put some anti-seize, as you can see, on that section of the pad, like so. And I've just put a thin film of anti-seize on the piston there, and on the back of the caliper there, just where the contact surfaces are. You see some people absolutely cake at this section with anti-seize where it doesn't even touch, and I don't know why they do that, because all it does is just attract dirt and just makes it look like a right mess. So I only put it on the sections with the anti-seize there. So here we go. So I've put anti-seize on the inner pad there, just on this section, and it's just got a clip, so that just simply, I'll do this with one hand, like that. Just clips into the piston section there, the inner pad, and the outer pad. So it just sits there, and all you do is just lay the caliper up and over both, and then you can insert the two 7mm guide bolts there to hold it into the carrier. So just lay the caliper back down, obviously make sure this brake hose isn't twisted or any way, and then simply just do up your two guide bolts there, the 7mm Allen, do these up. Do them up tight, but don't hang on them because they don't need to be up mega tight, but just do them up. If you're concerned, obviously look on the internet for a torque spec, but I just do these up like so. Don't have to be mega tight. Like that. Perfect. So have a good look around, and then last step is just to put back on the retaining clip that goes in here. Before I do, I'm just going to put a bit of anti-seize just literally in this hole, because it will stop the retaining clip from ever seizing up. I have seen these seize up in here before. So to fit this retaining clip, I'll just fit it in the bottom section there. As you can see, there's a bit of anti-seize just in the section it goes into the caliper. And I put it in there just briefly, and then I get some side cutters and lift this clip up and over like so, and then just press it in like that. Nice and easy. Can be a bit fiddly, but just a bit of perseverance and you'll get there. And remember to fit the two rubber plugs at the back here once these carrier guide bolts are all done up nice and tight. And if you do go ahead and make sure I'll crack the bleed nipple off to press the piston back, do make sure that's done up tight as well. Don't hang on it because these can easily snap off. So once that's all done, as you can see there, it's all boxed up nicely. Just make sure everything's done up nice and tight. And always I'll just put a bit of anti-seize on the front here just to stop the wheel from seizing on. So make sure your brake hose is not binding up, or make sure that's all sitting nice and correctly. On the other side, I've just gone out and just done the other side too, so that's all done and dusted. All I need to do now is just put the wheels back on. Oh, and do make sure I've just pumped the brake pedal just to bring the piston back out of the caliper. That is very important. Always make sure you pump the brake pedal back out and I always just like to make sure it all still spins nice and freely, and also just make sure the brake fluid level, once you pump the brake fluid or pump the brake pedal back out, just ensure that the brake fluid level's all nice and correct there. Okay, so all there is for me to do now is literally just put the front wheels back on and let it off the axle stands, and then obviously once you've always done a brake job, always just go for a road test just to make sure everything's working correctly. Take it easy for a while, just so whilst the brakes are then bedding in. Okay guys, anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. As you see, it's a very simple process to do front pads and discs on this car, and this will be pretty much similar to most other vehicles. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.